All right, so now that we know how to measure inflation, let's talk a little bit more about the consequences of inflation and specifically about who wins and who loses. The reason why we prefer to live in a world of price stability is the fact that inflation, once it kicks in, creates winners and losers. So who are the winners? Well, the winners are those who own money, and the losers are those who loaned out money. So the winners are the debtors, and the losers are the creditors. At least that is true in the short run. So obviously, if I get a loan today, so let's say today I get a loan over, let's say, $100. And let's assume that the price of an apple is $1. So then the real loan that I got, so the real loan, or the loan in real terms, is equivalent to 100 apples. So that is the real value of my loan. So now let's say at the repayment date, and even assume zero interest, let's not make it more complicated than it has to be, let's just assume there's inflation. So on the repayment date, let's say at the repayment date, the price of an apple is only $0.5 or 50 cents. So that means even though I loaned in real terms 100 apples, well, I have to repay in real terms 200 apples. So that is equivalent to 200 apples. And this is even without any interest. So what inflation does in practice is it essentially increases the real interest rate in addition to whatever you have to pay as the nominal interest rate. So let's do another example. Let's say I loan out today, so let's say in period, let's say T0, I get the loan, again $100. Let's say the nominal interest rate is equal to 10%, and in period T0, let's say the price of an apple is $1. But now what happens if, let's say, you have to repay the loan in period T1? So nominally, the repayment amount is equal to the $100. That's the principal plus the interest. So you have to repay nominally $110. But if, let's say, the period, if, let's say, the price of an apple has fallen to, again, 50 cents, $0.5, well, that means that technically you have to repay in order to come up. Let's say you're an apple farmer, so in order to repay that loan, you would have to resell you have to be able to sell 202 apples in real terms. So if you sell 202 apples at the repayment date and each apple costs 50 cents, well, that will give you the money necessary to repay the loan with interest rate. So again, so you loaned out 100 apples in real terms, but because there's 50% inflation, well, inflation basically, the 50%, it basically increases both principal and interest payments, so you have to repay a total of 220 apples. And as you can see, that this is obviously a tremendous burden for companies who borrowed money. So if you live in a world of inflation, that ultimately will increase the debt burden of the companies, which then may have horrible consequences, like they have to report lower profits because the debt payments go up, and then maybe their stock market value will fall, and of course that will spread to the entire economy. So in the long run, everyone will lose from inflation. And of course that is particularly true when inflation becomes unpredictable and spins out of control. And there have been several examples in history where there was hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is the term for spinning out of control. And once there is hyperinflation and people cannot predict anymore what the value of the money will be in the future, people just will stop using money, and the entire financial system collapses. Nobody saves anymore because it's useless to save any money. Nobody wants to make a loan anymore because everyone is afraid that by the time the loan is due, the repayment is worthless. So what happens is that the economy ultimately drifts into a barter economy. If people need to make big purchases or so, they rather pay in something like gold or something which promises to keep its value. But of course, whenever you have a barter economy, that is also problematic, because one of the advantages of money is that, it's just a perfect means of transaction, whereas in a barter economy, very often I need to have what is known as the coincidence of wants. So let's say if I don't trust the money and I want to sell my bicycle because I would like to have a scooter, then I need to find someone who would like to have a bicycle and would like to give away a scooter. And that is what we call the coincidence of wants. But of course, whenever we have money, I just can buy the scooter with money, and I can sell my bicycle to whoever I want to for money. That I don't need to sell it to somebody who is in need of a bicycle and wants to give away a scooter. So money is just like stable money is just like a very efficient grease of the entire economic engine. But as soon as that grease becomes inflationary, it becomes like sticky and bad, and it just brings the entire economic engine ultimately to a breakdown or to a halt. And of course now I talk mostly about inflation, but when it comes to deflation, it's just the opposite. So the winners are now the creditors, and the losers would be the debtors. So that's the same logic, but just in reverse. Okay, so I hope it is clear that inflation creates winners and losers. And in the next slide or in the next video, we briefly talk about the causes of inflation.